All right, let's get right into it. Today, we're talking about something that feels like a closely guarded secret among linguists. It's a completely different way of thinking that explains why, after years of study, you might still feel like you can't actually speak a language.
Does this hit close to home for you? You put in the years, maybe in high school or college. You memorized all those vocab lists, you drilled the grammar rules, but the second you try to have a real conversation, it's like your brain just shuts down. Well, you are not alone. And it turns out the problem probably isn't you. It's the method you were taught.
So here's the fundamental problem. We try to consciously learn a language, but when we speak, we use it subconsciously. See, our brains are wired for communication, for stories, for jokes, even for a bit of gossip. They are not built to be consciously shuffling through a mental filing cabinet of grammar rules while trying to talk. It's a total mismatch.
Think about it like this. Imagine a professional sprinter getting ready to race. What would happen if, right as the gun goes off, they started thinking, okay, now I need to contract my left quad, then my right glute? They'd trip and fall flat on their face, right? Well, that is exactly what traditional language class asks your brain to do every time you try to speak.
Okay, so let's really dig into why the old school approach, the one used in most schools and universities, is just, well, fundamentally flawed for so many people. It's often long, it's expensive, and for a lot of us, it just doesn't work.
The answer, the solution to this whole mess, lies in a concept that honestly feels like a professional secret. It's the key that unlocks that natural, fluent ability to speak, and it flips the entire traditional model right on its head. And that secret really comes down to the work of a total rock star in the linguistics world, Dr. Stephen Krashen. His whole idea isn't about studying harder. Nope, it's about understanding how your brain was actually designed to pick up a language in the first place.
And the core of it all is this one big idea, comprehensible input. It sounds a little academic, but the concept is simple. Your brain only, and I mean only, acquires a language when it understands the message being sent, not when it memorizes a grammar rule, but when it can figure out the gist of what's being said. Here, let me show you what I mean.
Okay, let's say you know zero English, and you hear me say this: don't put the cart before the horse. To your brain, that is just noise. It's gibberish. I could repeat it 1,000 times, I could break down the grammar, it wouldn't matter one bit. It's incomprehensible, so your brain learns absolutely nothing from it.
But what if we add a little context? Imagine you still know zero English, but I point to my eye and say, this is my eye. Then I point to both of them and say, I have two eyes. And then I blink and say, I can close my eyes. Suddenly, your brain makes a connection. The meaning is clear because of the context. That is comprehensible input. That is how your brain starts to build a map of the new language, attaching new sounds to concepts you already understand.
So the big question is, how do we actually do this? Well, the first step is going to sound a little weird, maybe even radical, but it's based on studies of thousands of people learning a new language. It's all about pure input, with zero pressure to produce anything.
That's right. For the first 6 months, your only goal is to listen. That's it. Don't even try to speak. Krashen found that learners who spent 5 to 6 months in this silent period, just soaking in the language like a sponge, had this massive breakthrough. All that time, their brains were quietly building a model, a whole neural network of the language, without any of the stress of having to talk.
But what do you listen to? You can't just turn on a complex movie and expect it to work. It has to be the right kind of input. Dr. Krashen calls this the I+1 rule. Think of I as your current level of understanding. You need to find content that's just one step beyond that. That complex movie? That might be I+4, and it's so difficult your brain just gives up.
This gives us a super practical roadmap. You start with cartoons made for very young children. Why? Because the vocabulary is simple, the sentences are short, and the visuals make the meaning crystal clear. It's pure, comprehensible input. Then you gradually level up to educational shows for kids, then maybe some content for teenagers, and eventually you'll be able to understand simple lectures for adults. You're always trying to stay in that perfect I+1 zone.
All right, now for a huge piece of this that traditional learning completely misses. It's not just about what you're listening to, it's about how you feel while you're listening.
Krashen calls this the effective filter. Think of it like a mental wall. When you feel fear or stress, or you're embarrassed about making a mistake, that wall goes up. And when it's up, your brain literally stops acquiring the language. All that good input just bounces right off. This is exactly why being put on the spot in a classroom can be so destructive. The solution? Find things to listen to that are not just understandable, but also genuinely interesting and totally low pressure for you.
And what about grammar? I know this is the big one. Well, according to this theory, you don't really need to study it. With enough comprehensible input, you will just start to feel what sounds right, the same way you do in your native language. You won't be able to name the grammar rule, but you'll use it perfectly without even thinking.
Okay, I get it. You can't just start this silent period from absolute zero and hope to understand anything. That's fair. You need a way to get the ball rolling, to give your brain a few hooks to grab onto from the very beginning.
So here's the trick. Before you dive into your silent period, it is incredibly powerful to learn the 100 to 300 most common words in that language. These words act like little anchors or hooks that let your brain start to guess the meaning of everything else around them. It's what makes the input comprehensible in the first place.
But how you learn those first words makes all the difference. Just passively reading a list over and over? Yeah, that's not going to do much. The absolute best method is something called active recall. This is where you force your brain to pull the answer out of your memory, instead of just looking at it. The classic example? Flashcards. You see one side and have to actively remember what's on the other.
And this isn't just some learning hack. This is straight up neuroscience. When you try to recall something, you fire up way more neurons in your brain. And get this, when you make a mistake and then see the right answer, it actually triggers a little stress response that boosts your brain's ability to change and adapt, helping you remember it way better next time. You are literally building stronger, faster pathways in your brain.
So when you put it all together, the big question becomes pretty clear. It's a total shift in how you think about this. Are you ready to stop the painful, frustrating, and often ineffective cycle of conscious learning and start embracing the natural, effortless, brain-friendly process of subconscious acquisition? Because that shift could change absolutely everything about your journey with a new language.